why I think it's so critically important for churches to have self-differentiated leaders. That is, leaders who know where they're going, but, and this is the other side of the equation, you've got to stay connected to the people, including the people you don't like.
Yeah, that's right.
You've got to stay connected. If you don't, they won't follow you. And so here's the other little insight that I want to give leaders is that if you will gently move in the direction that God is calling you, they will follow you because they desperately need someone who knows where they're going.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See how that gives you a key insight in how to lead. Oh, by the way, you're going to have to be patient because it might not be this year that everybody follows you. It may take a little while, but they will follow. By the way, have you ever noticed that churches, and this is true, business is true, when they lose a pastor, how quickly they try to replace the pastor? Why can't you just float for a year?
We've never had a pastor for more than a year, I guess.
But you guys need to keep one a little longer than that. Yeah, churches and organizations are quick to replace because it's almost as if organizations need at least the leader. Yeah. Homeostasis. Yeah, things are not going to feel very homeostasis, very even, very balanced if there's not a leader. And if the leader is the one we always blame so that we don't have to take responsibility for ourselves, we desperately need a leader, right? So, I'm going to give you 10 quick rules. I'm trying to remember where are we in time. I'm going to give you some insights into how to watch your body. And by body, I don't mean your physical body, I mean the church body. How to watch your body and notice what's going on, what's really going on in your organization. And this is where I think I've been helped, and I think I've helped other leaders get a handle on actual signs you can watch to say something's up. I'm not a prophet, but I do have some ability to see into the future because of what I'm about to tell you. There's certain things that are predictable if you're awake. Okay? When we are not getting along, if you and I are friends and one day we're not getting along, we're not going to be hanging around together. And so you can actually watch what's going on in your church. If you've got a couple that have sat together for 40 years and then one Sunday, and then the next Sunday, and the next Sunday, you just got some critical information nobody's told you. When people who were formerly friends are separating physically, they're expressing where they are emotionally with each other. Because most of us tend to avoid people we are in conflict with. This is why your new leadership skill is that when somebody disagrees with you, you make sure you're right behind them in the food line. Stay connected. Because the natural impulse is not to be connected. Yeah, go ahead.
Why is this happening? I mean, is this a human
Yep.
behavior,
Yep.
genes, or
Maybe almost biological. We avoid things that make us feel the sense of danger. So it's pretty core. And we do it without thinking. But see, as leaders, we're going to be thinking. If I'm avoiding somebody, I know I'm trying to avoid them. So I'm going to try to create some counter moves that somehow puts me in relationship to them so that there's been more than one time I've been able to make up with people just because we were in the food line together and we had to talk to each other. Yeah, so we're going to be the ones creating the opportunities that other people are avoiding. So this gives you a great insight into watching. In fact, church groups do that. I've seen churches disagree with churches before, and then they used to be in time fellowship, and now as groups, they don't even see each other anymore. Yeah. So when people are uncomfortable emotionally, they tend to use physical distance. Here's the crazy thing about this. When your kid runs away from home, when they try to do an emotional cutoff with you, they're actually more connected to you than if they stayed. Because they made the move because of you. And so they're not free of you. Freedom is saying, I can visit mom and dad if I want to, but I don't have to. So even a kid that's running away from you is emotionally connected to you because they are running away from you. And they're doing this first one.
So I think love your enemies thing. This is maybe one of the hardest things to do.
It is hard.
I don't know, keep praying or something like that.
I think I'd start doing different behaviors. The one thing, if somebody's got a problem with me, I don't try to fix them. I try to stay connected to them.
But they keep going away.
And that requires a different level of leadership skill, though. It's easy to tell people what's wrong with them and what they need to fix. It's much harder to stay connected. So one of the things that I will tell all leaders to do is you've got to remain immensely curious. If you're not curious, you will probably be anxious. And it's hard to be both of those at the same time. Tell me more. Tell me more ought to be our response to other people. Even those that we severely disagree with.
It's like the setting of your workplace to your family and your church. You spend half of your life in your workplace. And you go to church once or two times in a week.
Yeah.
And trying to deal with those things. It's big difference.
It is big.
Yeah.
So I
But
guess,
you clearly see how you're living in different families. Yeah.
so I guess that's the practical application of carrying your cross daily, right?
Carrying your cross daily, yeah. Loving one another. It's also kind of the balance from Galatians where we're to carry our own loads, but we're to carry each other's load. For trying to figure out which one of those is which. Galatians 6, yeah.
I think we should follow God's teaching, right? God's teaching in every day in our lives to eliminate all of these feelings, something like that, right? Yeah, just Pastor Vic said, we need to follow Jesus' cross daily, right? It's just something like that. That's why people doesn't think about the teachings of Jesus, right? I think they're still lacking connection to God, something like that. So I don't know, right?
Yeah. I'm finding Christians having a hard time being like Jesus and embracing sinners. Our culture, our time, we're living in times where the variations of what's wrong, there's more options now, right? How do we love the person who's doing what we clearly think is wrong in the way that Jesus did so that they want to eat with me the way tax collectors and sinners wanted to eat with Jesus? I think we're being pushed in the direction where we're supposed to take, where kind of the larger culture is saying, take some stands. Well, I am taking a stand. My stand is that I love other people the way Jesus loves people. No, that's not what I mean. Well, that's what Jesus did. And how do you keep that center? Yeah.
I like what you said because I call it the pendulum effect.
Yeah.
Where people sometimes, even Christians, would either side on the extreme left or the extreme right. Extreme left that says this is normal human behavior. If I have conflict with you, I'm gonna get away because I feel threatened. I feel this, I feel that. It's normal, which is it's normal. However, there's also the teaching that says love your enemy. But the extreme right is that, we condone, even though you are doing this, you're doing that, I will accept you, I will embrace you, I will condone.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, you gotta be able to balance between that pendulum. And when put in a situation, sometimes we have to lean a little bit on the left if the situation calls, And sometimes we get a
That's
little,
right.
little bit.
Yeah, left and right is not defined by our culture. Yeah, I love to talk about there's left, right, and above.
Mm.
We're the above people.
Mm.
We're neither left nor right, but we can go whichever way we need to for the love of the person in front of us. But I think you've actually got this notion is that Jesus appeared to the religious leaders of his day as what we would call very liberal. Jesus wasn't doing liberal versus conservative. Jesus was doing kingdom. And that's who we've been called to be. So we ought to be a little odd because we can take right solutions and left solutions as needed, or neither one of them as needed. Yeah.
And that's a hard call.
It is a hard call because
that's our daily call. And that's why what you're saying is that's what's happening in the community.
Yeah.
And the tendency most often than not is to physically separate because
that's right.
I can take it or
yeah. I've been attempting more recently to be near folks that I disagree with in terms of their lifestyle. I'm trying to understand indigenous people in our part of the world, and my sense of what is Christian, what is not, is being pushed on. You know, I'm going, okay, has anybody ever noticed that that's probably not Christian? Anybody else noticing this? Am I the only one noticing this? You know, but it's being pushed because I'm up against. But the same thing would happen is if I'm up against people who come from a different part of the world, which is I think one of the beauties of working where I do is because we've got people from South Africa, from South America, from Mexico, and it's interesting that each of us have a little bit different way of looking at the world, and we can enter that world if we're willing to listen. If we're willing to listen to each other. Okay, man, this is too good. If you replace a loss too quickly, you're not processing. Let me give you a simple example. I've been married 50 years. My wife dies 2 months later. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. Ever seen that happen?
yeah. Yep.
It means I'm not grieving loss. I'm replacing loss.
Right.
So anytime we're quick to replace something. In fact, I tell people who lose a dog, would you give yourself about a year before you get that next puppy? Because there's certain things, loss brings in certain spiritual moments that's hard to explain. And if we shortcut those things, we don't experience the fullness of it. So if we lose a preacher, we've got another one in a month, probably not going to be healthy, probably not going to turn out well. So as leaders, we slow some things down to say, we're going to be okay. We've got some folks here in the church that can preach. So anytime you watch fast replacement of loss, you're probably dealing with a situation where somebody's not grieving deep enough or not giving the proper process time to grieve. It used to be pretty typical to consider a year a pretty normal grieving period.
Well, but sometimes there's a need. Actually, well, it's good in our church because we have a lot of leaders
Yeah.
are able to lead
Yeah.
for a pastor. I mean, the work of a pastor. Right?
Yeah.
But maybe in some places, they really need a pastor, which nobody in the churches even know how to speak or something like that.
Yeah.
So, because I have those back in the countryside,
Uh-huh.
and so that kind of thing. And pastors from the seminary is so easy to get because
That's right.
the proximity there is
Yeah.
always.
If a church is going through a particularly anxious time, I would actually encourage them to get an interim who can't be the next full-time person to help the church fill in, kind of work through it so that, but an intentional interim is there, oh, this church is grieving, I need to be part of the process of helping them do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea there to the process of thing because we can be able to get maybe the best. Well, I wouldn't say that description is best, but sometimes not the best way to describe it. You can be able to find out the nearest person who actually has the passion
Sure.
dedication to serve, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so if you guys suffer a loss, give it some time. It's okay to live in that space of loss. God teaches us some amazing things during times of loss and pain. I didn't say it was fun. I just said it's useful. Next one. Chronic problems mean somebody likes it that way. When a group makes a decision about changing something and they can't seem to get it changed, you guys been at this where you can't decide whether or not you made a decision the last time, and so you have the meeting again, and then the next time you have the meeting, and the group seems to know the right answer, but nobody has the courage to move there? That's probably telling you that somebody in the group likes it the way it is.
Exactly.
Somebody. So I ask the next question: when we can't change something, who's getting rewarded by this move, or who will lose because of this move? And then you've got a whole different set of questions to work through. But when you've got a problem, it can be as simple as, are we going to replace the roof now or next month? Well, next month, okay. Well, are we going to replace the roof now or next month? No, next month. What's going on that you can't fix the roof? Unless, of course, you're broke, and then that's a whole nother problem. But, so, number 3, increasing your tolerance for another's pain is a way to increase their functioning.
Tough love.
Yeah, what we mean by this one is that if we rescue people too quickly, they do not grow. When I see a homeless person for the first time, the right thing to do is make sure that they've got enough to eat. If they're saying they're hungry, the right thing to do is to feed them. Nobody can go wrong there. Once I get to know Joe by his first name and I realize that by buying him food, I'm giving him money that he can buy his drugs with, I've got a totally different story to deal with now. So we're not talking about the panhandler at Tim's now. We're talking about somebody I know they're using drugs, and I know that when I take care of their money, when I take care of their food, whatever money they have can go to drugs. To love them, to love somebody that is hungry, I feed them. To find out that somebody is intentionally hungry because they're spending it on drugs, I've got to love them a different way. Does that make sense? Or I really don't love them. I'm just trying to get them off of my, listen, money's cheaper than time for most of us. Yep, you get this one? So sometimes when Sister so-and-so is insisting that you call her this afternoon, and she does it like every week, I usually wait till the next afternoon. Again, I've got a pattern that I'm working with. So this is not just putting somebody off. This is, I've got a pattern and I can help this person learn. I love this. Pastors, we need to do this. When people call us and they get upset because we weren't available on the phone, we should seriously ask our people, have you prayed about it? So you called me before you talked to God? Seriously? Make sense? Okay. Sometimes we can't solve problems because we're too serious. Seriousness is sometimes a worse problem than the problem. We've all been at places where it just seems gloomy and dark. If we're going to solve a problem, it's so serious. I mean, it's life and death for the organization. It's big stuff, man, and we've got to take it seriously. Your groups need to play. The solution to seriousness is play. I've been at elders meetings where I keep a deck of Uno cards with me. And if we get to that one crazy place where we can't make a decision because we're too serious about it, I'll pull the cards out and we'll do a couple of hands. Right there at the elders table. We'll deal it and we'll play a couple of hands. Play invites creativity. seriousness makes us anxious, and we lower our ability to be creative. So, when we're anxious, we're not creative. So if you're a leader and your church is always about the work of the kingdom and never about play in the kingdom, you need more play. That's why fellowships, picnics, fun should be part of the mix. And this is not just true of church life, this is true of corporate life. Employees that play together are better off than those who don't. Next. Okay. 5 more. And then, is there food coming into here?
Yeah, it's already here, yeah.
Okay. The next one is secrets kill communication. In community life, whether we're talking church or corporate, all information should be freely shared by everybody except for the most private of details. Let me tell you why this works. If you and I have a secret about Joe, it makes us kind of a special group. It excludes everybody else. It sends out false information across the group because we got this little secret. When only certain people know certain information, it makes those people special and the other people outsiders. So in community life, we should be as open and as honest with information as we possibly can. Thus, we do it with church budget. Elders, those of you who serve as leaders, sometimes you carry secrets to your death. I know you've got those kind of secrets and you'll take them to your grave. That's fair enough. But sometimes those very secrets are the ones that will kill you if you're not careful. Don't get caught in the confidentiality trap. When somebody comes to me with a confidence, I say, you need to understand, I'm not a counselor. And if you give me information, I'm going to use it in a way that I think is best. If you're not comfortable with that, there may be some things you don't want to tell me.
Right. Be upfront.
Yeah, be upfront. Yeah. But every now and then you get caught in a confidentiality trap where in order to keep a confidence, you have to hide information the church family or the other elders absolutely need to make a good decision. That's the tough place to be. So, I got one family story on this. My grandmother used to tell stories to all of her grandkids, tell them secrets, and tell them that they were the only ones who knew the secret. Do you see how that created a power system for her? She had an instant link to all her grandkids who all had the same secret, but could not talk to each other about the secrets because they were keeping it themselves. One of those secrets is that my Aunt Helen could not have children, and one of her nieces had a daughter, and my grandmother brokered the adoption. That is, she did the in-between for the adoption so that the daughter could take care of the grandchild. Here's the problem with, or the great-grandchild actually. The problem with that is that great-grandchild, Julie, didn't know. The whole family knew the secret, but the kid that it was her story, she didn't know. At my grandmother's grave, these ladies, my aunt, the granddaughter, the great-granddaughter, Julie was there, at my grandmother's grave. I'm telling you the truth. They are looking down in the hole where the casket is. Julie finds out who she really is on that day. And you thought your families were sick. You got nothing on mine. But I want you to think about how that secret played out in the family and how it kept people from having open and honest conversations. That can happen. Again, most information needs to be public as much as possible when you're in a group body. What are you going to keep secret? Someone who tells you that they're having an affair, they're trying to cut it off. You're not going to spread that information. You are going to make sure that the mate knows, and you're going to press on the person who told you the story. You need to tell your mate. By the way, I'll go with you. In fact, if you want me to keep this secret, we'll do it now. I mean, so there's some pressure you could put on this thing, right? But secrets, you can imagine how free flow of information is healthy for everybody. Okay. Your family of origin taught you how to lead. If you were a firstborn kid, you're going to take charge. You're going to make all the lastborns in your church frustrated with you, particularly the secondborns who had to deal with their own firstborn. Our birth order does have some effect on how we lead. And while it's not determinative every time, the vast majority of your leaders will be firstborn, a vast majority of your peacemakers will be middleborns, and your favorite people, the ones who make you laugh, will be the babies. There's enough of that there that you can kind of see it. Is it determinative? No. If there's 5 years between you and your older sibling, there's a chance that you kind of grew up as a firstborn. So there's certain things we know about growing. But if you grew up in conflict, say you're a secondborn or a thirdborn, and you grew up in conflict with your older sibling, chances are you're going to replicate that in your work life with an older employee who's in that birth order. We tend to understand people who were born in the same birth order as us. You see how this kind of makes, again, it's not, I wouldn't make it the big theory of it all. Some have tried, but it does help you know, how are people going to live out their life in church community life? Well, sort of like they grew in the family they grew up, sort of like that. Unresolved issues from our family of origins, that is, things that we're still struggling with, wrestling with, they do have a nasty way of showing up in other families. And we're usually the common denominator. Yeah.
Usually, like the modern family settings now we're in, there are now, second families, third families, and now you have illegitimate, legitimate, and how it works now, like same-sex marriage, and those kind of things contributes also to the environment, to the
That's right. Yeah.
how you act as a leader also, right? Like some balance on it.
Yeah. It's funny, we raised an only child, so we've learned more stuff as she's in her 30s now. So she's now telling us the stuff that she really didn't like about what we did. So we're learning lots of stuff now. But it's interesting, the skill set that she got, even as a child, she could play with herself for hours because she had to learn that skill. And she's not so crazy about having other people around her. So if this child doesn't have enough alone time, people crazily exhaust her. Again, whatever your story is, if you grew up in a very crowded family, that is, say there was 12 siblings, and you marry and you only have one child, I have a feeling that family's going to feel odd to you compared to the one you grew up in, where you had to share everything, and resources were always limited. Yeah. Now, next, diagnosis. Diagnosis relieves responsibility. If I can name your problem, I can walk away from you and act like I don't have anything to do with you. What I mean by this is, in our time, vast numbers of children are being diagnosed as ADHD. Why weren't these children being diagnosed that way 50 years ago? Now, play this out with me. What if my child, who just is way overactive, can't sit still, what if my child isn't ADHD, but he is labeled ADHD by the doctors and then the teachers? What if the diagnosis is wrong? What damage does it do? Well, first of all, it'll probably get the child on a whole bunch of medicine that the child doesn't need. But more than anything else, this child will be what we called them to be within a few years. Now, is there ADHD? Yes, it's a real phenomenon and it can be treated. In fact, we just had a psychiatrist, Dr. Christian Leader, talk to us about this the other day, and it takes a really specialized test to actually get it right. It takes a really good test. But anyway, What happens to the parents when the label's placed on the child?
Mm.
Believe it or not, there's a sense of relief. We've got a diagnosis. But it's going to be short-lived. So my point here, and I don't want to venture into medical stuff because I'm not a doctor, is that if we get diagnosis wrong, it sticks. So one of the ways we do this in church life is we call each other things like liberals or conservatives. Diagnosis does not help us actually deal with real people. So if I can say, this is tied to the notion of identified patient. If I can blame somebody, then the rest of us can relieve our sense of responsibility. So diagnosis is not as helpful as they're just the enemy. Mislabeling people causes us to treat them inappropriately.
Mm.
So I try my hardest not to put labels on people to the best of my ability. It's a human thing to want to be able to identify them. More than one cause, let me do this one. More than one cause created any mess that you come in. We need to get past simple A plus B equals C kind of solutions in the life of the church. Chances are, if you find a solution in the life of the church or in your organization, it's going to take 3 or 4 things, not just one thing. You're not going to be able to move one piece of furniture and fix everything. This is why this stuff is so complex. So, if somebody is an alcoholic, it is possible their dad was an alcoholic. It is also possible that their dad was not an alcoholic. So when people say, oh, I drink because my dad drank, that's a false equation. There's more reasons than just my dad also drank. Because that same dad could produce somebody who wouldn't touch a drop.
Mm.
So be mindful that anytime that you're looking at whatever situation you're working in, don't settle for a real simple A plus B kind of answer. Look for A plus B, C minus D, F times J kind of thing going on. Think in terms of not bowling, where one ball knocks over one pin. Think in terms of pool, where one push can actually affect several. So think in terms of that kind of dynamic when you're thinking of what's going on in the life of the church. Here's what I've discovered. I'm going to use the analogy of furniture. I hope it communicates. In the life of organizations in church, you can either start moving every piece of furniture, I'm using that metaphorically, that's in front of you, and then have to redo it a year from now. Or you can spend time getting to know the system that you're in, and you can move the one piece that's going to move the 4 other pieces. Kind of makes sense? And so don't allow yourself to fall in simplistic analysis of what's going on. There's often more going on than meets the eye. By the way, have you ever noticed how complex church life gets, or any group life? Think in terms of group dynamics. If there's only 3 of us, there's basically 3 lines of communication, right? Now 6 of us. Now 8 of us. Now 32 of us. Yeah, it's exponential in how many lines of communication once you add more people into the mix. One more? So more than one cause created your mess. Whatever you're telling me, I can tell you there's more than one cause. So if you say, Joe caused it, I'm going to say, Joe didn't do that all by himself, did he? So the last one is we need challenge to survive. And this is what you were bringing up earlier, is the notion is that our organizations, our churches will not grow unless there's a challenge in front of them. So leaders need to be consciously throwing your systems off balance so that people can grow. But it takes wisdom to do it. And you don't cause a problem just to cause a problem. But you do want to cause a problem if it helps bring people a little closer to Jesus. So if you know what your goal is, then you can do that. So again, this stuff is useful in corporate life as much as church life, and maybe even in your own family. So.